I'm Blair. Welcome to A Geezer's Perspective. When I was teaching college, at some point, no matter what the subject was, management, law, human resources were the ones I taught, I would introduce my students to Blair's world-famous first law of communications. At the time, and still today, I consider it to be one of the most relevant and valuable contributions I could make to their education. Blair's world-famous, and of course that got a laugh, first law of communication states that if your audience fails to understand you, it's your fault, and very likely will become your problem. I had made up a character from my Standard Oil days who I used in class to illustrate strange, odd, or just plain dumb business practices that I had seen. Called him Good Old Art. He was always doing something crazy to illustrate a point that I wanted to make. Well, in this case, based upon a real event, Good Old Art came bursting into my office, shaking a piece of paper, red-faced, and clearly upset. He said, "Glenn, we have the dumbest employees in any company in the country." "How so, Good Old Art?" I responded. "Well," he said, "you know that change we made in the retirement plan? I sent out a letter to all employees explaining the change and how important it was that they read it, understand it, and sign that they understood it by the end of the month. The responses were due a week ago, and so far I have less than a 10% return." "Is that the letter you sent?" "Yes," he said as he handed it to me. It was front and back 2 pages. It was a mess, loaded with benefits jargon, acronyms that were meaningless, long convoluted sentences, unnecessary detail, and the request to sign and respond was buried somewhere in the middle of the text. I'm surprised he got even a 10% return. It was not written with his audience in mind. He had written a letter that only a handful of benefit experts could understand or would even bother to read. His audience didn't understand him. It was his fault. And now it was his problem. We have to get 100% understanding of this benefit change. We see this often. The marketing manager lamenting lousy sales in response to an expensive advertising campaign. "But it's a great product." "Well, it might be, pal, but you failed to convince me. You failed to even get me interested enough to try to understand your message. Find some better words or put them in a different order or something. They're not getting to me." It's roughly akin to a citizen of Glasgow giving me driving instructions to Edinburgh. I understand some of it, but not enough to get there. The failed communicator is often defensive in being told this, as though his audiences are obliged to understand or show some interest. I see this often in communications about how to use a tool or an electronic gadget or almost anything. The instructions are written by the people that invented and designed the gadget. It's all easy and logical to them. They don't even need instructions, but not to me. I can stare at a sentence for 20 minutes and still hit the wrong button. Solution? Don't have the people who design products explain them. Ask the guy who's going to use it to explain it. Seriously, send someone over to my house to show me how to get it working and how to use it. We'll spend hours, yes, probably hours, until I finally understand it. Then let me write the instructions in the language that I and many other users can understand. Another example, communications to an older audience involving modern technology. It's a burgeoning market, but terrifying to many of my generation. If you want to reach us, you must understand us. You must accept us. Don't try to change us. Just translate your instructions into our language. It's really no different than writing instructions to a Spanish audience in Spanish. Well, that's the message of Blair's world-famous first law of communications. If your audience doesn't understand you, it is your fault. and will probably become your problem. Well, give it some thought. Leave a comment. I hope you find my geezer perspective interesting and will share in my adventures by becoming a subscriber.